Hey y'all, welcome back to Yell Respectfully with Jay Ashley, presented by Just Awesome Because Productions. Okay, NBA, we're at the All-Star break. All-Star, it is in the Bay this year, which is funny with me being in Los Angeles. I am not going, but I kind of considered it for like a hot second. But anyway, I love All Star Break in the NBA for a couple of reasons. I just like to kind of see the guys go to the games and be fans of the games and be excited for other players and stuff like that. Like, just like that real NBA community and camaraderie, I think is on like full display during the All Star break. Like you see guys that are rooting for current teammates, former teammates. I mean, there's a lot of family members now too, like family members and stuff. I just think it's a really, really cute to see these professional basketball players that usually are going out to like beat their opponent every single time, really have a moment to kind of just sit back and enjoy basketball in a space where like a game someone winning doesn't really necessarily impact standings, and it just is one of those things where I'm just like, you really get to see them just kind of have fun and enjoy, and I really enjoy that energy. Now, with that being said, they are doing a different format for the All-Star game. There's like four teams, a little like miniature knockout tournament, and then like the final matchup. I do not know how I feel about this. I am gonna have to watch it and see. Preliminarily, I feel like we should do away with this format. I think I'd have to double check. I think it does allow for more players to get selected, and to that, I think that that's potentially a good thing. But preliminary thoughts without seeing the game, I don't love the concept of it. But I'm gonna have to watch and see how it plays out and see how it feels to really know, my opinions on that. If I could cherry pick how I want the All Star game matchup to be, I would like us to go back to having the team captains and have the team captains pick. Now, we did it one year where it was a year where like Jokic was like, I'm not going to be the last pick. And he like picked himself, which was an hilarious moment. But my favorite like pick your team moment was like during one of the COVID years. I don't remember if it was, I think it was the year after the bubble. I don't remember exactly what the year was, but it was LeBron and KD as captains, and they got to pick teams. I believe they did it on TNT's Inside the NBA. With like Ernie, Shaq, and those guys, and it was them picking like back and forth. And it was the year where KD and Harden, like something happened. I think that they were teammates and someone got traded. Like if I were to go back and find, I would know exactly what I mean. But just on top of my head, something happened with KD and Harden. And LeBron was such an instigator through the entire process where he distinctively did not pick Harden so that KD would have to. And literally, LeBron is cracking up laughing. He's purposely not picking James, not because he's not good or anything like that, just so that Kevin would have to. And Kevin literally straight faced refused the entire time. And LeBron is like barely holding it together. And it was like one of the funniest things. Like, obviously, it sucks to kind of have, that element between KD and James, especially because they were like teammates or whatever the case may be. But still, it was just super funny in that moment. And it's kind of one of those things I'm like, I want to bring that kind of energy back. Going back to like the guys generally just having fun with basketball. I love that energy. I like the team captains and picking your teams in that regard. I think that that's a fun element. Now, I did not like it the one when they did it with Jokic, where it's like you're picking right before the game. I don't like that. I do not like that. I want them to pick it like a week before or something like that, so you know who's on your team. They can start a little text chain. It can kind of be like that element. And I agree with Kobe Bryant, late great basketball player, Laker legend. I agree with Kobe Bryant in terms of like the All-Star game has kind of turned into like oh, who can do a fashy dunk and all these kind of things, who can heave it from half court, like in the game. And he was saying that the All-Star game should be your favorite and best player against another favorite and best player going at it like backyard hoop style, just like I got you one on one. You can't guard me, you can't defend me, I'm gonna get past you kind of energy. And I want that with a little bit of an asterisk, because of course we know like Kobe was known as Black Mamba, had like that killer instinct, right? I would kind of like a happy medium. In my opinion, we had this scoring format. I think it might have been either last year or the year before, and I really liked it actually. It mirrors similar to what Unrivaled does now in the 3-on-3 league, where it's three quarters that are timed regularly. And then I want the fourth quarter to just be this is the game score energy. So that way it's like, even if you're down, you know you can come back. And if you do lock down defense, like I think guys would try harder in that regard to be like, you're not scoring the game winning shot on me kind of energy, right? Also, I want to win by 2 element because I feel like that kind of gets a nod to street ball, which is like, check up, game, let's go. So and if I had to cherry pick formats, I would like it to have 3/4 times, with the fourth being a target score kind of energy. And with that being said, I would want the first half, maybe the first quarter, but potentially the first half because of like rotation, so everyone gets on the court. I would like that to be more of like we're having fun, let's see what we can do. I want to see like guards that never really dunk try and dunk. I want to see, three centers that maybe would like to shoot a three, see if they can score up on one. Again, this is definitely more of a just have fun basketball kind of energy. But for me, I'm like, for the first 2 quarters, I'm okay with that. Like, go out there, have fun. I want to see smiling on everybody's face, people running, no injury type of things. Like, I don't want to see just complete blow-bys. I want you to at least try to pretend like you're defending. But at the same time, like if someone's going in for a dunk, I don't want you bodyguarding them because we don't want any injuries or anything like that. You know what I mean? So I don't want to see any like push-offs or stuff like that. But like try to stay in front of your dude, hands up, stuff like that. But then I feel like once you guys go to your halftime break and you come back third quarter, it is full on you can't guard me energy, and I'm going to stop you energy. I want full on lockdown defense from every defender. I want guys passing the ball, like doing all the things, trying to get to their move, get to their spot and pull up. Like I want, like Kobe was saying, your best player guarding the other best player and going at it. Now, even with that, I don't necessarily want to see just a full on oh, give me the ball, ISO, I'm going to try and score on you kind of thing. Like, I still want to see good basketball because essentially, and this is in no respect to other NBA players, I say this all the time, if you make an NBA roster, you are good at basketball. Like, full stop. I know we sometimes like to say, oh, this guy sucks, he doesn't get any playing time, whatever the case may be. I have thoughts on that, but for me, that's more of a coaching decision than anything else. If you are on an NBA roster on some level, shape, way, and form, you can play basketball. Right? So for me, with the All-Star game, I think what makes it a little bit more unique is the fact that you have the best superstar player from every team on one team. And that's what makes it like that kind of beautiful moment that we don't get to see that often. To that, I would like to see a third quarter full on defense, fourth quarter full on defense as well. But it's like at the end of that third quarter, then we have a target score. And then if you want to have a little bit more of I don't want to say more of an ISO moment because I still don't want to see like a one-on-one type thing. I still want to see good basketball, but I just want to see the effort of we are playing. That's my take on All-Star. But at the same time, it's like whatever they put on for the most part, I'm going to tune in. I'm going to watch it. It's a lot of hoopla. The dunk contest, I like the names that are a part of it this year. I'm excited to see what these guys can do. There's a lot of younger guys, so I feel like they kind of have a little bit more of a motivation and the creativity and things like that. So I am excited. I shouldn't necessarily say I'm excited. I am looking forward to seeing what creativity can come out of the dunk contest this year. There's a variety of different body types, which I think is also pretty interesting. I think for the most part, dunk contests they look pretty similar. So I think there's a variety of body types in this dunk contest. So I think it's interesting. The 3-point contest, the names in that it'll be interesting to see who wins. I'm not all that fully tuned into it. Not to be disrespectful, but it's just kind of like there's some repeat names that very likely have a shot at doing well. There's some new names that again doing well. But this is my take on the 3-point contest. Shooting from like the balls being stationary and you also standing flat-footed and shooting is very different from in-game shooting. And so to that, it's more so just the hype of like how many points and you beating people. So for me, like the 3-point competition only really becomes competitive once people have already like gotten their scores up and they've already been shooting. But to just this 3-point it's kind of like you need to create the competition in the competition. So for me, just the list of people who are competing as is, I'm kind of like, okay, it'd be more so like as you already have guys that are like on the bubble and yelling, make it or whatever. That's when I feel like it gets more interesting. So I'm pretty sure like once I go to sit down and watch it, I'll probably be a little bit more into it. But as of now, I'm kind of like, all right, yeah, those guys can shoot. Fantastic. I like that this break happens because I feel like a couple guys may need a little bit of rest and, get the body right, maybe go see family. I have no idea. But just for me, the thing I'm the most excited about with All Star break really is the fact that it kind of signifies once you come back, it is a full on press for playoffs. That is what I really appreciate from All Star break more than anything else. Free agency is done. All the moves and the trades have happened. One has already been rescinded, but we will still see how that shakes out. Yeah, I just feel like it's like all of the, oh, will I get traded? How's our team doing? All those kind of like what ifs are kind of set once All Star comes around. And when we come back into it, it's like, okay, you know who your teammates are, you know your standings in the league, you know how many games you got left and what the schedule looks like. Let's go to work. I'm one of those people that super enjoys the play-in tournament. I know it became a thing, I believe, the COVID year because of the break in games and just making sure everyone kind of had a fair shot at making the playoffs. Although I'm pretty sure the Phoenix Suns have something to say about their unbeaten run and not making the playoffs that year. But I love the in-season tournament, and I love that it's sticking around post-COVID as well. I think it creates an energy of I still have a shot that some teams would have completely just been like, oh, we're losing, we're past six in the standings, just shut it down. And honestly start to tank. So I feel like that whole like, oh, let's tank energy happens so much later in the season, and it's only by so few teams because essentially with the way the play-in tournament the play-in tournament is set up, a lot more teams have an outside shot than did previously. The only thing I would like to change, if possible, and I know just the way it's set up, it's very difficult to do, is the fact that the number one seed has the disadvantage of not knowing who they're playing until after some of the other matchups are set. That's the only kind of like first, number one seed disadvantage that I can see. I've heard a couple whispers about it. I haven't heard any main complaints about it, so hopefully it's not really impacting any changes in terms of things. But that's the only thing I wish they could potentially, switch around so that the number one team could know who they're playing sooner. But I also understand, certain matchups, the games have to happen as is, whatever the case may be. And I think you just got to do your homework. I think the benefit is that you just got an extra rest because you were the number one seed. So either way, in-season tournament as well. I love the in-season tournament. It's, I was kind of thinking, I was like, what did that come up? My friend was like, I think it came because of the WNBA. So the WNBA had the Commissioner's Cup, which also I enjoyed. And, it just brings an extra energy. So with the in-season tournament, I think it brings an extra energy to the first half of the season. I've been a basketball fan, NBA fan for a very long time, and I have never really seen this level of intention and attention of the players and the staff and the franchises so early in the season because you're actually playing for something earlier in the season. Whereas like before, it's like, oh, whatever, like we're playing, sure, but we're going to play into it a little bit and everything like that. But no, with the in-season tournament and the bag that comes along with it, people are going at it from the beginning of the season. And I feel like it's really started, I think frenzy is the wrong word, but I think it's really started like an extra level of attention to the beginning of the season. Because listen, 82 games is a long haul. I think it brings an extra attention to the first half of the season that people generally weren't giving that much attention to. And I also think that, so far since we've had it, the in-season tournament winners and finalists are also, talked about in contenders for the end of the year. So I think even to that, it gives team a good barometer of like where you stand and like what you still have left to fix. I think OKC, which they did last year along with this year, is putting on a phenomenal first half of the season. And they lost the in-season tournament this year. They lost to the Bucks, which I did not see that coming. And it's funny because they lost and you thought like, oh, let's see how they react, whatever. And they turned around and cooked the rest of the league again. And so it's just one of those things where it's just like, it's a weird thing to consider. It's a newer thing to consider, but I think it does add value to the league. I'm really here for it. It's really interesting to see what's going to happen as we come back from All-Star break and really go into the rest of the season. The big trades that have happened. These guys can really settle into their teams. Their new teammates can put some roots down, switch addresses if they need to, get their kids settled and all the things like that. So I think the All-Star break is like a really good just like pause for a second for everyone to kind of settle in and then really come back to be like, okay, cool, rest of the season, we're going after the playoffs, we're going after that ring, let's go get into it. Can I just talk about a couple exciting games that happened right before the break started? The Hawks Knicks game. Okay. So I have NBA League Pass, and the game that day, like every single basketball team was playing. I don't super love nights like that just because it's really hard to track all of them. It's really hard to look at everything. So I kind of just pick like based off of the highlights and the scores and the matchups potentially, and those are the ones I rewatch later. Say that to say, the Hawks game, they were kept talking about the highlights of them during the other games because I believe the games that night were on either TNT or ESPN. And so, during the halftime shows or whatever, the game, they'll show you highlights and scores of other things. So when I saw that it was a 1 point overtime game, I was like, oh, I've got to watch this game. So I watch it on replay, already knowing what happens. I love that I already knew what happened because it kind of took a little bit of the stress out of it. But also knowing what happened and watching that game was so torturous because you're just watching the Knicks fumble themselves out of a win slowly but surely. And then even in OT, them winning by one, it was off of a missed shot by the Hawks with a final possession. So they also very easily could have lost that game. They were up, I think, by 6 in the fourth quarter with like less than, I want to say 13 seconds off the top of my head. And it just like, why are we in OT, y'all? Like it was like a misfumbled inbound by Cat late in late in the fourth, and it's just like it's the little things that matters, it's the details that matters. It just was one of those things I'm like, I didn't feel like they needed to be an OT. Now, here's the thing. I'm not an NBA player, so I can talk about it. The refs. In fact, let's just make it a blanket statement. The refs across the board. I'm going to just go ahead and throw NFL in this for no reason too. NFL, NBA, WNBA, shoot, even unrivaled at this point. The referees, I struggle to say have completely gotten out of hand because I definitely understand that they have rules and regulations and things that they abide to and they try to have an orderly fashion and everything like that. I will say this as a fan of the game, as an athlete myself when I played, I think at the end of the day, we just always want a fair game called, right? You don't want to feel like you're getting an advantage or disadvantage because of referee interference. I think that's a fair thing to say. With that being said, I feel like these refs are like too emotional. And it's one of like, for instance, like let's just take, for example, the whole like Scott Foster, Chris Paul thing. Like, I feel like you should not be able to attach a player and a referee by name to beef. You know what I mean? And if you could, I feel like that person should never be able to referee their games. Like, I don't know. First of all, I do want to say I am loving seeing so much more women refs in across the board. I do love seeing these women on the court. The players, the guys are yelling and expressing themselves, and I love seeing them not blow their whistle because it's just like I'm one of those people where I'm just like, if a player is yelling, there's something different between yelling and being disrespectful. You're yelling because your adrenaline is up. You're in the middle of the game. You're feeling passionate. You want to defend a player, whatever the case may be. I think it turns in from like yelling and defending a call to being disrespectful. Usually when one, you're no longer talking about the call, and two, when the referee says, hey, you're being disrespectful, watch yourself. And if that player continues to go past that line, I think then at that point afterwards, a technical can be warranted. But I feel like, honestly, a lot of the male refs are the ones that are blowing whistles like so insanely. Listen, I grew up watching basketball in the 90s, and granted, I don't think we need to be like letting NBA players haul off and like punch each other and stuff anymore. Draymond may have a word about that. But at the same time, it's just like seeing guys get technicals for like literally not responding to a ref or seeing guys get technicals for like a wave, seeing guys get technicals for like bouncing a ball with aggression, not in the crowd, not in any way endangering anybody else's space or a crowd or a fan. I'm just like, are you guys serious? I may have to read the NBA rule books and see what officially is like on the books in terms of the rules regarding these things. And I think honestly need to know what the purpose behind them are, because I feel like if something happened in an extreme moment and you make a blanket rule about that, it's just like, it was to control an extreme moment to make sure that doesn't happen again. I don't think you need to just put rules and regulations on anything and everything going forward. So, for instance, I'm one of those people where I'm just like, I miss the guys hanging on the rim after a dunk, but I understand the reason why we don't like doing that. The NBA doesn't like them doing it is because you can rack the rim, you can, warp it, and sometimes those can cause delays. Like, I mean, listen, back in the day before they changed how baskets were structured, Shaq used to break glass on rims all the time. Dwight Howard has absolutely like warped a rim on a dunk. You know what I mean? So those were huge delays and everything like that. Safety elements, I get that. So to that point, I understand why those rules exist. However, I think if a guy dunks, hangs on, and I think the current rules is like if they're hanging on the rim specifically to find a safe place to land, that's usually considered okay. But then it can't be prolonged, right? So my thing is just like, if a guy dunks, it's flashy, whatever the case may be, I'm okay with him being on the rim, flex, do whatever you want to do, as long as you aren't doing that like jumpy, like kind of like pulling kind of motion on the rim, because then that may result in some warping and things like that. So I'm just like, I think as long as they do that and it doesn't actually cause damage or delay, I'd rather see the fun stuff. And then it also becomes a business decision, because as you're flexing up there on the rim, the other team can easily inbound the ball and run it up the floor. And the next thing you know, you're not back on defense, and there could be consequences to that, right? I want to see those elements, So I'm one of those people, I'm just like, I understand why rules exist, but if you put a rule in place to stop an extreme, but then it kind of just blanketly just makes everything a little bit less exciting, I'm not a fan of that. Seeing guys get technicals for nothing is so infuriating, because like then you see guys who aren't getting technicals because of their reputation, and they are far more animated and lively and borderline is subjective, but disrespectful, and they're not getting technicals because their reputation gives them so much more leeway. I find that absolutely ridiculous. When you see a very quiet guy in a moment kind of get hype for a second, and it's still not in any way like disrespectful, but because it's beyond their like baseline level, and now that's a technical, that would make me go, well, let me actually earn this tech then. Like I would just think of like the origin villain stories that these refs are making because of these calls. Anyway, yeah, I just feel like the refs in general needs to call a fair game, take their emotions out of it. Like, yes, I understand that they're human, and I'm not disregarding that. There's a lot of refs I could probably do by name and say they do a great job. I love their calls. It always seems fair. I personally love that when refs take the moment to tell the players and explain the foul to them, because in most cases, I would just say this, like as a personal level, as an athlete, when you get called on something that you disagree with, obviously your first thing is to defend yourself, defend whatever, and try to explain the thing, right? So as long as that's not going over the line, I feel like every player should have that leeway of doing just that. Now, when the call isn't going to be changed and there's nothing you can do about that, it's like, okay, cool, explain it to me so I don't do it again. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's definitely the level of referees I love and I respect, when you see them talking next to the player. Like usually because there was a foul, it's in between a free throw or whatever the case may be. And you see them sitting next to the ref, talking it out and being like, okay, cool. And the ref being like, hey, you extended. I love seeing that. And the ref is like, hey, you extended your arm. And I also love when refs say things like, if it was you, you'd want that call. And it's like, yes. And for me, I'm like, that's fair. If it's truly a foul, I call it. Yes. These late calls, when these guys wait to see if the ball goes in or out before they blow their whistle, that also drives me nuts. Because if it's a foul, it's a foul. It should not be a foul if they miss it or make it or whatever the case may be. It's a foul. So listen, this is the reason why this podcast is called Yell Respectfully, because I full on am on my couch very often time be like, that's a foul. Are you serious? So yeah, I just feel like we need fair game. I don't know what the protocol is, ref rehab. Because listen, I mean, it's not a secret. There's certain calls, there's certain things that are considered emphasized in the NBA almost every season, where they're just like, hey, we want to make sure we're cracking down on this and whatever the case may be. So I'm just like, why does it just kind of get cherry picked what does and doesn't get called or whatever? Or even, I'm big on this one too, if you're a star, whether or not that gets called or not, because you don't want your stars fouling out. So I'm just like, just call a fair game. I feel like these players are all good enough that they can adjust accordingly. You want people playing by the book as best as possible. And then listen, if there are times and places when people are getting over on it, but it's still in a way that's not, for the most part, impacting the game, it's a part of the game. But again, it should just be fair across the board. So say all that to say, I'm excited for the rest of the NBA season. There's a couple of teams that are completely on fire and they're doing well. So OKC, which I called from the beginning of the season. I kind of wish I had this podcast when the season started. So OKC, which I called from the beginning of the season, was going to be a problem. They truly are. I think they share the best record currently in the NBA. So them and the Cavaliers. And of course, the Cavs, they went on that 14 plus game winning streak. So the Cavs and OKC both have 10 losses and 44 wins. Wow. And then let's just look at the Eastern Conference right quick, right? So you have the Cavs followed by the Celtics, Knicks, Pacers, Bucks, Pistons, Magics, Hawks. There's a couple more other teams, but I think those are the kind of only relevant-ish ones for right now. At the bottom of the heap, there is some coupling up, so we'll see, what happens. But at the same time, I feel like in the East, the Cavs, the Celtics, and the Knicks are really who you need to pay attention with or potentially can, be in that Eastern Conference final matchup. Now, the Western Conference. Now, the Western Conference is where this gets juicy. So here's the thing. As a New Yorker who now lives in LA, even when I lived on the East Coast, I've been a Lakers fan since I was 3 years old, right? So I've always had an eye on the Western Conference purely because of the Lakers. Now, of course, as a New Yorker, I'm a Knicks fan by birthright, so I do pay attention to the Eastern Conference, but let's be real, for years, the Eastern Conference was just like, what's going to happen, maybe as an outside surprise. But for the most part, they're set up in a way where who's going to be your problem matchups and stuff like that, basically from the beginning of the season. Now, the Western Conference. The Western Conference. Let's look at the standings right now. I might actually do it all the way to the bottom because kind of everyone has a shot, right? So it's Thunder at number 1, followed by the Grizzlies, Nuggets, Rockets, Lakers, Clippers, Timberwolves, Mavericks, Kings, Warriors, Suns, Spurs, Trailblazers, Jazz, and Pelicans, right? No disrespect, but I think Jazz we can throw out. Pelicans, I did not anticipate them having such a bad season so far, and that's horrible for them. But they are gelling in a way that I mean, listen, with the in-season tournament, you only have to get up a couple more spots. Like, that's not a crazy ask. 10 games, it could be a little crazy. Okay, for the sake of current standings and where they are win-wise, let's throw out the Jazz, let's throw out the Pelicans. So basically, from the Trailblazers, which is sitting at 13 and all the way to the top, are all a conversation and all have a shot of at least getting into the play-in tournament and making a shot at the playoffs. Why do I say that? Well, Trailblazers and the Spurs are tied with the same amount of wins. Now, the Trailblazers have far more losses, which is why I think they potentially can be thrown out as well. The Spurs only has 29 losses. Now, you move up one spot from the Spurs. The Suns have 26 wins and only 28 losses. So the Western Conference is so bunched up. Literally, okay, so I'm trying to see if there's any separation. There's really not. So it's OKC at the top by themselves. Even the Grizzlies have 36 wins, the Nuggets have 36 wins, and then the next drop down is the Rockets at 34, right? So I think we can say, and even statistically this isn't set yet, but I think you'd say those top 4 teams are going to be in the playoffs. Great. After that, it's Lakers, Clippers, T-Wolves, Mavs, Kings, Warriors, Suns, Spurs. The Warriors have to get it together. Of course, they just made that Jimmy Butler trade, so we'll see. I think since he's been on the team, they've only lost 1 game and won 3, I believe. I may have that record wrong. The Kings just made that huge De'Aaron Fox trade away. They got Zach LaVine. I've been a huge Zach LaVine fan since he came into the league. Obviously, he was the dunk contest winner 2 years in a row. Listen, I think Aaron Gordon, I wish they could share a crown. That's the only dunk contest where I'm really just I feel like they should share a crown. But either way, so Zach LaVine's a great player, and I think that's going to have a very positive impact on that team, just in terms of energy, De'Aaron Fox is a great player, taking absolutely nothing away from him. But I think when you kind of swap one good player for another good player, it's just a new energy. Let's also remember they got rid of Mike Brown, which is wild to me. He was coach of the year recently. Fantastic coach. Like we saw that when he was an assistant coach on the Warriors staff, which is why when he got his head coaching staff position and then really turned around the Kings franchise, like, whew. Anyway, I cannot believe that man is not a head coach right now. But the Kings have a new coach. It is interim, but listen, Doug is doing a good job. Like Doug Christie, I'm pretty sure that's his name. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's his name, is doing a good job with these guys. He has been an assistant coach with that team for years, even through the Mike Brown years. So these guys are familiar with him. I'm seeing what he's doing. I think he's making a pretty good campaign to have the job permanently, I guess, while they're still in the interim hunting phase. But yeah, the Mavericks just made that huge Luka AD trade, and listen, they also got Max Christie in that packaging. Max Christie is a good basketball player. He's a young kid still. I mean, it's weird calling people in their 20s kid, but he is balling in Dallas. And not to say he wasn't balling in Los Angeles, but I just think that the way that the team was set up in LA, the roster, the rotations, the roles that you're asked to play, I don't think he was really like put on display to shine. And I say that because right now in Dallas, he's shining. I don't know if he's actually getting more minutes or not. I wasn't looking at the numbers, but I just feel like his name is coming up so much more often. I feel like he's always in a play. Like he is really contributing to his new team. The T-Wolves. Now, of course, they made the big Cat trade away in the beginning of the season. And I feel like they haven't fully settled into their footing yet. Like they're winning, but it just hasn't really seemed smooth in my opinion. Now, they are completely racked with injuries right now. Like I think half of their starting lineup is on the bench. Connolly is out. Randall, DiVincenzo. DiVincenzo was a part of that Nick trade. I think Gobert is out as well. Like that's 4 guys that are starting lineup or you're coming in and out of it during rotations. That's a lot of missing talent. So I have in no way lost faith in them. I do remember that they were one of the top dogs in recent years. I just feel like they haven't super settled into either their lineup, their rotation yet, but I think they also been racked by injuries. But listen, I know there's like any team you can say that. So the Timberwolves, I'm not counting out. I'm really excited to see what they can do with a little bit of a break, a little bit of rehab, come back strong, and I really want to see them go after the second half of the season. Now, I'm not calling this as a matchup. But I feel like a Western Conference final between OKC and the Timberwolves would be so fun. You have like 2 young guys that really want it and hungry and are going to go after it. You know what I mean? And I just feel like that. And of course, I'm talking about Ant-Man and I'm talking about SGA in that squad. And I just feel like that would be such a fun matchup. I feel like all their matchups so far have already been really good. I'm really surprised the Timberwolves actually beat OKC in their recent matchup. And OKC also just got Chet back. Like they've been missing Chet like for so long. Isaiah Hartenstein, who balled out with the Knicks, is now on that squad and has been holding down the fort. So it's going to be, I think, a little bit of time for them to re-get Chet, acquainted to the lineup and the rotations and them playing with him as well. Him and Isaiah play differently. They have different skill sets, but still I think bring in different things to the team and to the matchups. So I think it's going to take them a little bit of time too to adjust having Chet back. But like, yeah, they were missing their like 7-foot like top draft guy for a good while. So it's interesting to see like how they're going to do with having him back in the lineup. But say all that to say, the Western Conference is like the wild, wild west. Everyone has a shot, especially with the play-in tournament. And I am locked in for the rest of the season and ready to see what happens. So hope everyone gets to enjoy the All-Star break and kind of have some fun and chill out, because as soon as we are back in, I cannot wait to see how this NBA season shapes up towards the end. Okay, y'all. Make sure you come back to me. And remember to keep your yelling respectful. Bye.